Radio Vanne, Radio Vanne, Badi und Savion,
Gilg Jew, Gilg J as Gilg Nerach.
Claare. Hello, my name is Robert Cutting Carswell, Robert de Carslach.
Have I heard tell of old Bobby Bob?
And this programme is called Claare, a bilingual programme with part of it in the English language, as leis Perchi Sagilg, and with part of it in the Manx Gaelic, Chinja Namera, the mother tongue of Alan Vanning, the Isle of Man. As Bannachten de Trish. The final part of Man in Dwegbeen, the poetical sketch of the Isle of Man, is all about Castle Rushen. William Gell points out the one remaining tower of 3 that were built along the glacis, the slope built up to the walls in about 1540 to prevent siege cannon being brought up to have a point-blank fire at them. Ons skielferish na brerg en grim gaan de nies der as a ven, te nies der herten liebeg albanach moor, ach te ligge sere tret an liebeg greirish, den e prince for obvious. De ben jesje is der corers en braiach son guten vine liebeg. Watching programmes from the Eisteddfod Gened Leithel on the week, one featured the music of Dewi Puss Morris, who passed away in August of last year. It turned out that one of his was this, something of an old favourite here in Claare and Gael, and it had me singing along the other evening. Towers Geistjach Rish Radio Vanning, Stasiwn and Ashwn, Viscoller Scalia Mach by Dulish, Alan Vannin. Welsh band Edward H. Davies. It turns out the song was written for them by Dewi Puss Morris, although the band's songs were just credited in general to Edward H. Davies, from whom more later. Here on the southern tower, the remaining one of three along the glacis, writes William Gell, list, on the summit of this tower, whose silvery note proclaims the hour, his gift, when Derby ceased his power. For nigh 2 centuries its knell, the generation seems to tell he loved his ancient kingdom well. Well, the bell in the turret has an inscription, James, Earl of Derby, 1729. This James Stanley was the 10th Earl of Derby, succeeding to that title in 1702. James Stanley, the 10th Earl, was the grandson of James Stanley and Stanlachmoor, the 7th Earl. The 8th Earl had been Charles Stanley. He was the one who contrived illegally to have Illiam Dawn put to death. He'd been succeeded by his elder son William as the 9th Earl of Derby, but William had 2 daughters and no son, and the title could only pass to a male heir, so it went to his younger brother James as the 10th Earl. James had 1 child which died in infancy, so when the 10th Earl himself died in 1736, the title passed to a distant cousin, a Stanley of Bickerstaff. They became the Earls of Derby. Gena fel y dynia giri gol bacchus of all heri a lie beg albanach, te junwe, as te fagen, na fel yn ostio clear nish, ach glas as bwy. Te gemach lie beg albanach, gred a fel y ben hieshe eg a burach, as te fel I giri shen na fel eschen wishel. Tan lie beg albanach braich chain of a shen, as te grei na fel y ben hieshe eg a giri beg yn a soldier, on shan weg wach bren, as de bavai li bwen weg. Ma soort an lie beg ginch de gol de valia, as de berg shen ma vei hanna. As vei. Ach lur kugish van ven hiesje grei de berli berge, ons Castle moer klei, as de gol bakkes a lie beg as de vraag Jason shen. Gerne wel a yist de giri shen a jonno, te jin away kaart de lure, as a heer cho jur gorm, as gorm dorge ten ostje. Ach dan lie beg ginch de gol de valia, as de wel Castle moer klei on ernen son hanna, le schemeren, as kuch heistoma, as immery sharwenten. I could make merry with the black-haired girl, Yinan Sugra Rishen Yin Du, sung by Mrs. Nan MacLeod of Lurbosh in Lewis, with a group of women walking the Tweed.
Sukerishen in Tunehued, yes, that in Yalin Sukerishen in Tukanin Sukerishe Gruakika the Vigas, Wagnak Hato Yanin Sukerishen in Tunehued, yes, that in Yalin Sukerishen in Tukanin Sukeran Tus could now the Shule Vigam Haske Yanin Sukerishen in Tunehued, yes, that in Yalin Sukerishen in Tukanin Chitoni Kawashin Leshuna Jack, Kuganin Sukerishen in Tunehued, yes, that in Yalin Sukerishen in Tukamuth Karamarufo Kaid and Sikustra Kronta that Gell Yanin Sukerishen in Tunehued, yes, that in Yalin Sukerishen in Tukakias Rufka Kus Pukma Calling Fumus Fetor Yanin Sukerishen in Tunehued, yes, that in Yalin Sukerishen in Tuno Mahilus no Roin Peter Gunamo Malashe Yanin Sukerishen in Tunehued, yes, that in Yalin Sukerishen in Tuno Mahilus no Thrain Machin now I Skugak this Yanin Sukerishen in Tunehued, yes, that in Yalin Sukerishen in Tuno the famous place Get more age and bitchin Gahi Yanin Sukerishen in Tunehued, yes, that in Yalin Sukerishen in Tunehued Forskal hina buji katte viga krunen Harstal Yanin Sukerishen in Tunehued, yes, that in Yalin Sukerishen in Tunehued viga krunen Jolach jena Forskal jen Gahi Yanin Sukerishen in Tunehued, yes, that in Yalin Sukerishen in Tunehued.
A walking song from Lewis where the women rubbed the tweed back and forth on a table to thicken it, and they used rhythmic songs while they work, like that one, Yin Sukerishen Yindu, sung by Mrs. Nan MacLeod and a chorus of women. Gael wel Castle Moor Claioch as Gerich and Gael and Magitamush, tan ben Jesha Dusta Savora as Tigi and Machas and Usja Reert na Chira, as ti go brod lesh an Ulyanek dan Dunye, as ti Kaurich a Mach a Tollewist na Lai Ulyu Magitamu. As ti giri nish, ve na ri herish ulju a cheer show, as ti cor ersen gol back as a lie beg de vraiach son shen. Nish esh me wen jesje dort en dunje, kren vet au giri ve de ri, ha not een braiach jay son an jed shen. Kren fe nach doet er wen jesje, sein dat gol kaart nish son shen as ulju, sein dau ve me ri. Maar so hai en dunje. As wij de moer corrigas a giri ben de venerie. Rauwe giri gulle chor erbi, ach na jaishen haie as sonshen as ulju. As tre henke gus a boer van ustja lie dorge de loer. William Gell writes of this spell given by James Stanley, the 10th Earl of Derby, that it was his gift when Derby ceased his power. Well, Gell is again using a bit of artistic licence. This was a bell presented by what was to be the last of the Stanley family to be both Earl of Derby and Lord of Man, because whilst the Stanleys of Bickerstaff descended from a younger son of the second Earl of Derby, they inherited the earldom, the title of Lord of Man passed a different way. But that didn't happen in 1729, but in 1736. The lordship of Man went with the title of the Barony of Strange, which could be passed via the female line, and Stanlach Moore and Charlotte de Tremouille had a daughter, Amelia Anne Sophia Stanley, who married John Murray, the first Marquis of Athol. On the death of James Stanley, the 10th Earl, the lordship of Man passed to his first cousin once removed, and that was through the female line because it was Amelia Anne Sophia Stanley's grandson, James Murray, the second Duke of Athol. the fire of the blacksmith, or in Cornish, tan and gov. Now, is that a literal fire, or is it the fiery nature of Michael Joseph, Michael and Gov, as he was known, who, with Thomas Flamank, led a Cornish uprising in 1497 March? They reached London, in fact, in their march. Cornish band Dalla with that piece.
The Nation Station, Manx Radio.
Stasiwn yn asiwn sin, Radio Fanning. As ag y treiton, sé Claare na Gael, with scolar scalia mach, mish Robert Catine Carswell, Robert a Carslach.
Ever heard tell of old Bobby Bob?
De Claare na Gael rachlaas yn rysjacht yn lwg gigol scalia mach yn chydgeert, a sian joris brw a kraman eis rys in y dega Radio Fanning, as rai enam a Claare wain rol a sien. De podcast jyn Claare na Gael rys, nies, bis regedden nasty in y dega Radio Fanning, de truden rai de podcast ed, Apple Podcast, Amazon Audible, Spotify, Google Podcasts, TuneIn na Alexa. Here, where the drawbridge drooped to cross the depths of the forbidding foss, trim gardens now recoup the loss. Next, passed we these stout walls between, for much remains yet to be seen and told of Manin's king and queen. Outbuildings for the inner gate, here Tynwald mustered to debate, to sit and hatch the eggs of state. Well, before 1710, the House of Keys had no official meeting place and met occasionally in Castle Rushen, as mentioned here by William Gell. From 1710, they met in the library of the Bishop of Soden Man, opposite the castle. There were plans for a purpose-built meeting place in 1913, but there was concern about costs, so it was back to the drawing board. New plans were submitted in 1919 by the architect Thomas Brine, and his design was built and opened in 1821, and it was used by the House of Keys until 1874, when the legislature moved to Douglas. The old House of Keys is again open now, after becoming a museum in November 2001. Van ustje reisjach for the herish a tolú, yes, as for sor olkje. As van dunje na jade wun shenners dorte. O, gunje, me wis dunje tau, na liebeg albanach na mara brau. Emmes de wen, as burrig is, wis giri shen, na wel me wish. Nishesh, kidde ti giri doet an nis. Och, nee, doet an dunje, ti giri ven a rie. Sul tailiat, ma shen ma ti hanna, doet an nis. Maar so ha een dunje back, as houds henkig as a fles, honnig de rauwe foden a smoo, as de rauw toeren moere, as grinnig en stoomege. Van tjaag de rioil na jadu rasje dorres, as we irru de hai doeren, on les drummen kurre, as karnenok. As tre henke tjaus dai, wat de guljurid jint as mamer as air, as we immer die kortenen on, les tabagen moere oilok. Esh, haie true dorsen a jemer haloon, gus bol va shame woer a style rioil. Well, these lyrics by Colin Jerry are set to a tune by David Spears, and the song Keir Tug Me Grai is performed by Ruth Keggin and Rachel Hare.
Kid hag mi graid a ben exer, snag dag I graid au hin. Vi stomat an desach as buech an durishes a trin. Da menig vas an chidnan gwel, Shuglantin an sunny, as foglen grai a ken and mel, gold tajach ag bregan her mach jan mach hús mustad as Claare. Da bolach vejan sledden mai as da beker da kiet. Da geschilja arach eretai na lodri eretret. Leis denas chéine haimí rom ach gústa chamal sús. Mar fannín hagi cawra daw daraw I graiach fws. Och ecca helias palcha der da as nera oren chaumi ichin dan machrin achai. Ta oren nish rawin sel an sich man trom as trai. Hanod am ruma hia wel na jarud rumach rai. Fransara ishtivish maskil a heart Ukrainach shar. Da hag na deinja molderach da krak nan rein san
The harp of Rachel Hare accompanying the voice of Ruth Keggin. Cured hug me grai. Once I gave love to a lady. On shen van ven heshen a sai stol rioil as as daimonen, as va Adam moor ori, as van lorg salau ek jint as glen as kledjinen, as dag chow van een shadow she gillian ons raw, as dag ver na skirre jorish kjon nan fer elja. Maar so haien dun je hoek is doort hij. Wel me van heshe, maar so nish tauwes de rie. Te, doort de van heshe, nish tammy marie. Maar so is veen a shadow as jige ori, as trebeer bleke ori rish purtig rij doort hij. Wel me van heshe, spruis jo de hand wel eens de rie, nish ne wel wegelje de jiri. Oh, me gunje sheshe door de wen hesje, as we gin de wei nieuw veeg de loer. Tammy skietje sjo hanne. Imigus en Easted, as instead nish, de wel me Marie, de wel feme mer wei me imper. Nish es me wen hesje doort en dunje, kren vet hou giri wei de imper. Confronting us, the castle yard, so reminiscent of the guard, and that dread legend, 6 months hard. Ah, Rushen, thou concept sublime, what idiosyncrasy of time associated thee with crime? Hadst thou not fallen on evil days when thou receivest vicious strays to purge them of their evil ways? Haply a more refining touch released thee from the vandal's clutch. Mannin, though mute, rejoices much. By the time of William Gell's poem in 1906, Armitage Rigby had completed his work in removing the 19th century buildings which constituted the prison from the early 19th century, in use until the opening of the Isle of Man prison in Victoria Road in Douglas in 1891. Lord Raglan had become an enthusiastic proponent of getting rid of what had been developed at Castle Rushen for its use as a prison, and he used to frequently visit the site during 1904 and 1905, when the architect and later MHK, Armitage Rigby, led the work. That work also revealed things about the castle and its various stages of construction. Perhaps the tune existed before that, but these Breton lyrics were written in 1929 by Jean Bernard and Jean-Marie Prima, and this is a version of it made by Alain Stivell in 1972. Well, he recorded it in 1972, issued in 1973. Instant Liar, this is the remake from the 1980s.
She's the Laura, she's all my long. She's the Laura, she's a man. She's the Laura, she's all my long. She's the Laura, she's a man. She's the Laura, she's a man. Blanc, blanc, chopinat, Lola, blanc, blanc, chopinat. She's the Laura, she's a man. Blanc, blanc, chopinat, Lola, blanc, blanc, chopinat. She's great, read with Tebet, Lola, she's great, read with Tebet. She's a great, read with Tebet, Lola, she's a great, read with Tebet. She's a great, read with Tebet. I got my head, read with carrot, Lola, I got my head, read with carrot. She's a great, read with Tebet. I got my head, read with carrot, Lola, I got my head, read with carrot. Trimi, se rejette l'ona, non c'è toi trimi, se rejette. Non c'è toi trimi, se rejette l'ona, non c'è toi trimi, se rejette. Non c'è toi trimi, se rejette. Bevers en bende, she can't l'ona, bevers en bende, she can't. Non c'è toi trimi, se rejette. Bevers en bende, she can't l'ona, bevers en bende, she can't. She's the Laura, she's a mat, Lola. She's the Laura, she's a mat. She's the Laura, she's a mat, Lola. She's the Laura, she's a mat.
Sonne Schistre, a song about cider. And that was Alain Stivell, not, as I thought, from his 1973 album, but a remake, a different version of it that he made later. I can't remember whether it was the 80s or the 90s or even later. I'll have to look that up. William Gell is celebrating Armitage Rigby's work in returning Castle Rushen to its medieval condition, getting rid of the modern prison buildings there. Where jail accoutrements defiled, and prisoners nursed the Iron Child. And the Iron Child, he explains it in a footnote here, is the stone-breaking hammer. So this is in reference to what he says about criminals sentenced to 6 months hard, 6 months imprisonment with hard labour. So it's not surprising that he goes on to describe them as grim occupants who never smiled. Free labour had, with strenuous dint, unearthed old Mannin's royal mint, which erst evolved the precious glint from outfoul refuse, hard and deep, which long had girt the stately keep, while memory had seemed to sleep. The royal mint was the one which cast halfpennies and pennies in moulds, and were dated 1709, with the motto of James Stanley, the 10th Earl of Derby, sans changer, together with the Stanley crest, the eagle and child. Maar je sheshe doortish, imi is inch dan yeast de wel mi giri ve me imper. Och, nee, doorten dun je, genodig e gino shen, genodem braich je son a lid shen, genellig imper on egen ontre, genoden yeast gino imper je peger bi, de jaru genod. Nishesh, gauw taas de je so doorte ben, jesje, she riemish, as genel lusach me run je sheshe, me so nach ginos gol as lau? Imi rod, me dat e gino regime, for the gino imper gime, as shema hagne, as signed thou ve me imper, maar so schuljat. Maar so ve currit ersen gol, as houts ve gol ve gennachten fien jou hauer me gelnegge, as smoney erischen heen, hanel shaw en rid kaat de jinnowe chor be, de jiri de ve de imper, shen de vol roud. Hig en lie beg de leer de way ski jay shaw. Sen renke a voer, as van ustje, do de lure, as chew. The Friel sisters from Glasgow with the strong Irish cultural heritage of their family from Donegal. And as well as watching Eisteddfod Gyned Leithel on Channel Pedorec and the Festival Ante Celtic de Lorient on France 3 this week, also been able to watch Vlaag Jol Negeren from Loch Garmin, Wexford, on TG Car. Sure dat de jaru station en asjoen radio wanning als je Claare na Gael vis verglaasje kaartnish, mer een pien Robert kutin karswal, Robert de karslach.
Did the ever hear tell of old Bobby Bob?
Van gesh getlach, as van rie shege, as van dunje, agli jas. Ach, weinig jade won shen as doorte. O, gunje, me wist dunje touw, na liebeg albenacht na mare brauw. Emmes de wen as boerig is, wiskeri shen, nog wel me wish. Krijg we zij nish door de nies. Och, nee, door de dunje, tam me wen jesje giri, wene imper. Soel ja taai door de nies, teine imper hanna. Maar zo hij en dunje de walje. As hure de rauwe kastjul jashinet les mamer glozit, les jollowen as alabaster, as les gatten era. Van a saiduren guller korens oordach roschen dors, as wat shege karnen, as boele drummen as cymbalen. As tre highest jak on, honneke, barrenen, as eerlichen, as duken, shirweishach on shen grishar wenten. As Gell van a dorsen. As honneke a wen jesegen, the saaier stol riol, jint as onsledden weer de air. Although those coins were dated 1709, they were only made legal by an Act of Tynwald in 1710. Between 1710 and 1733, there were more coins produced, but no Act of Tynwald which declared them legal. Then, in 1733, James Stanley produced a second issue of Manx coins, and these were struck from dies rather than moulded. There was £300 worth struck of pennies and £200 worth of halfpennies, and these may have been made from old cannon from Castle Rushen. As noted before, James Stanley, the 10th Earl of Derby, died 3 years after this coinage was struck in 1736, when the succession as Lord of Man went to the Dukes of Atholl, who had their coinage struck in England. I think William Gell goes off on a flight of fancy here. The dungeon deep in Mother Earth, where captives bade farewell to mirth, to wondrous legends gave their birth, of monsters and their monstrous acts, theme which the feeble mind attracts more strongly than the strongest facts. Well, this is Edward H. Davis again, the Welsh band, another of Dewi Pws Morris's songs, Cheer Glass. It means green land, literally. I think it means something like grassland, the moorland of the West Wales.
Anhiriog efo'r hyd, mae dy ferw
Edward H. Davis, a leading rock band in his day, and that was the song Tir Glas, Grassland, Moorland. And in that song it makes Tir Glas a figure in its own right, really, and the song is entitled Dewin y Newell, which means the Wizard of the Mist. And in fact that was the bardic name that Dewi Puss Morris took when he became a member of Gorse the Bear, the Welsh court of the bards. Dewin y Newell, the Wizard of the Mist. Now the idea of a dungeon seems to have attracted William Gell, although in what I've read about Castle Rushen there's no mention of one. I'm sure there are dark passageways and rooms in the base of the building, but in relation to stories about the likes of a dungeon and the dreadful things done there, Gell says that legends like these seem to impress people more strongly than the strongest facts, and he continues, "Yet such this fact has ever been, susceptibilities are keen when influenced by the great unseen. Reader, should you be one of these with feeble nerves and shaky knees, observe, our function is to please. So, if you please, 'tis wisest tact to leave uncanny fictions tract for scenes of grand historic fact." Well, of course, that sounds, it's all very well, but it was him who brought it up, so it's having your cake and eating it, isn't it, really? And here he returns to the work of Armitage Rigby. "Passing within the inner gate of this grand citadel of state, we note the efforts made of late, its pristine grandeur to restore, ere barbarisms had glossed it o'er, on roof and windows, wall and floor. Van stalrioilek mus wiele urged, as va adamur uri, va mus triest und darten urged, as we jashinet les brillianten as carbunkelen, as ons een derrelau vi kummel a lorg, as ons a lau elje vi kummel a grunjeg. A serdag tjauji van een shadow gillian ons der ro, ulju regit reren urgedok, va een voor 4 uur woer va der wiele urged, gus a gribassan slew, je muds me ver slew. As rumby van een shadow eerlichen as duken ons channelen. Maar so haie dunje hoek as doort hij. Wel, me van jesje, maar so nish ta was de himper. Tei, doort is, nish tammy me imper. Esh, haie, as haie schies, as gauw hij bacht de loergie. As esh doort hij. Nish esh me van jesje, ga nel weg maar naar de handen gitte wij, nish ta was de imper. Kere tau de grij me van je jesje doort is, sheme imper mish, as esh, higem de wij me fab, im is inch den jiste wel shen martij. This is another walking song about a boy who was evidently a bit of a tease, little Murdoch best at baiting, Wurge wig a chin chonish, sung by Miss Penny Morrison and a chorus of women again at the walking.
all clearly. Je de meiden wel al clear, skede shit dat je met de jan. Je de shit dat je met de jan leg, kruier van jan zodat. Leg kruier van jan zodat, ook als clearly ging te kennen. Ook als clearly ging te kennen, samen gewacht meer rood. Sana mocht gewacht meer rood, gedacht en doe je de leeuw. Gedacht en doe je de leeuw, doet je vergeet die geem. Doet je vergeet die geem, hoe met de hele wouw.
That's Miss Penny Morrison from Uist to Jas, the Isle of South Uist, and a walking song about little Murdoch, best at baiting, wurch je wig a chin na chonish. Och, nee, Dorten dunje, crevis on a velu giri. Ge nodu arach chit de ve de feb, ge nellach unfeb ons een tail Christi, as ge nodu nist jino eich or erbi. Maar an je shesje doortish, gin vogel erbi elje me gjonegge, sign de ve, as bim me feb, maar so imi rood nishkus en yeast. William Gell mentions an event of 1722 here. Here, zealous to defend the right, deprived of liberty and light, the saintly Wilson won the fight. Though might or right would ride roughshod, meekly he kissed the chastening rod, and left the issue with his God. And the imprisonment of Bishop Thomas Wilson will be the starting point next time. Our Cartonish Chenet from 7 to 9. Chris Pearson is here to present 2 hours of the best chill-out music for your Sunday evening. And then at 9, sundown eases you through into the early hours of Monday morning. The Festival de Celtic de Lorient comes to a close today, and that festival also features performers from Galicia on the north of the Iberian Peninsula. Well known here in the island through Shanach's stew is Galician gaita player Anton Davila, who plays some Galician jotas to close Claare and Gael. As we saw until the next time, this is Robert Cutting Carswell, Robert de Carslach.
Oh, Bobby Bob.
Wishing you a very good night. Eve I'm a chriort, as duts my yeary and share.